WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Joan Fitzgerald of Fort Atkinson is the Democratic candidate for the 46th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Joan Fitzgerald, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for participating in these candidate interviews. I'll start by asking you, what is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
I'm running for Assembly because I think we really need common sense, collaborative, and responsive representation. I really believe if we listen to voters, listen to each other, we can solve problems in this state. And honestly, I think we have a lot in common. If we focus on shared values, we can really move the state forward. I'm a retired high school teacher. I taught math for 33 years. I was on the county board in Jefferson for 5 years. And I'm just excited to get to Madison and get to work and, move Wisconsin forward.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
I would say first priority for me would be repealing that 1849 abortion law. I hear from people all the time how important it is that we work on making sure women have rights, reproductive health rights. In addition to that, I've worked quite a bit in the last few years on gun violence prevention. And so I know in the last session, there were some bills introduced related to safe gun storage and suicide prevention. And I would really like to work with other Assembly people and just, make some progress in that area. I think it's so important.
So if you're elected, you'd be entering the Assembly during a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Well, there are so many big issues in the state that we really need to take care of. And so that money sitting there isn't really doing anyone any good. So for me, I think top priorities would be public schools. There are just so many that have to go to referendum, and that's unacceptable. So that would be priority number one for me. I also think we have a child care crisis in this state. We could certainly do some good there. Municipalities talk to me all the time. EMS and fire services are reaching sort of a critical stage for them as far as funding and how to move forward. So, I think if that money's there, we need to start supporting some of those.
You talk about several spending priorities there. I didn't hear anything about tax cuts, tax reform. Is that part of your platform at all?
Well, when I retired from teaching, I was a math teacher, and so I worked for a firm that did tax prep for individuals. So, I know I sat across the desk from people all the time that there's certainly a need for continued tax relief for people. We have made some progress in this state, giving some relief for the middle class. I think we need to continue that. There's certainly areas where we could provide some relief while also making sure, that the wealthiest pay their fair share.
You mentioned K-12 education as a priority for you. It's also a leading issue for many voters. You talked about increasing funding. What does that look like? And I guess what's working in K-12 education and what needs to change?
So having spent 33 years in a public school, I do understand how important public education is to communities, to families that they serve. So I am a big proponent of public schools. I think, when you say about spending, one area where we've really dropped the ball as a state is in special ed funding. We really need to start reimbursing districts at a higher percentage than we have. I think overall the formulas we use to calculate both both funding and revenue probably need to be looked at. I'm not a fan of using public tax dollars for private schools. I think those are all things we can look at. What schools do right in this state is we have wonderful teachers, wonderful families, wonderful kids. And we need to start making sure that we are recognizing that teachers are professionals. We need to value them. We need to do everything we can to retain good teachers, to support them and treat them as the professionals they are.
What about the state's higher education system? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges. What does the future of that system look like to you, and where should the legislature focus?
Well, if people haven't realized already, I'm a big proponent of education in general. I think it's an excellent investment for our state and just so valuable to all of our residents. So for me, the future would be a robust university system that is accessible to everyone in the state, a vibrant technical college system that provides job training and other opportunities, apprenticeships. I see all of those as so valuable for our residents.
Increased state funding in that area then?
I would say, in the universities, we're currently 43rd in the nation as far as state support. We're falling behind our neighbors. So, yes, I do think there needs to be some of that. I think just overall support is very important. And there are a lot of things, clearly some things cost money, but just a support system where we're standing behind and trusting our universities and our technical schools to do what's best, I think is also very important.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
I think probably childcare is a big issue. I was just at a door the other day talking to a gentleman who was home from work that day. Not by choice, he had to take care of his kids and work from home because his child care center closed. He was thankful he could do it, he had the opportunity. But it illustrates how vitally important our child care system is to making sure people can work. The Child Care Counts program was incredibly effective at making sure child care centers could stay open, keep it affordable for families, and pay their workers a good wage. So I would definitely say we should support that program. I also think childcare is one of those areas where we could think outside the box a little bit. There are certainly partnerships between community organizations, child care centers, businesses in town, and government. We all play a role in solving that problem. And so I think this is really an area where we could get creative a little bit and find solutions.
Another workforce question for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I would support that. I think keeping jobs in state is just so important. We keep those dollars here. Our workers are better trained. We grow the workforce. Ultimately, all of that is so important to growing our economy. So yes, I would support that.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections and overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I am aware of this issue. I've heard about this from a few different people. If employers are not treating their workers well, if they're cheating them, all of these things, it hurts workers throughout the state. So yes, I think we need to hold employers accountable to the extent that we can. If we have, laws and regulations, we need to enforce them. This is an issue.
Moving on to housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Rent control, or building more rentals, or other?
Yeah, housing has been, talked about as an issue throughout the entire state. So clearly, we need to do something about this. Median house prices are up, rent is up. People are really struggling to afford it. So, overall, anything we can do to increase the supply of housing, I think, is really the way to go. Last summer, the governor did sign into law 5 bipartisan housing bills. I would have supported those. I think that's a great first start. Anything we can do in that area, I think supply side is the way to go.
Transitioning to healthcare, medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
I hear from a lot of people that healthcare is a big concern to them. I live in a pretty rural district, and this is a concern. People are very worried about losing access, and they see the other hospital closures, and that very much concerns them. So, in my area, we do have a really great hospital healthcare system in my town. People don't want to lose that. So we need to do everything we can to make sure that we're not losing, especially in rural areas, that access.
Increase Medicaid reimbursement to hospitals?
Most definitely. We need to expand Medicaid. We have been talking about it in the state. That would be a great first step. We've also have some money set aside to help those hospitals in western Wisconsin, and we need to get moving on that. And we don't have time to wait. We can't wait for problems to arise.
What about mental health care? It's a growing concern for many Wisconsinites, also a concern for state and county budgets. What are you hearing about this in your district, and how would you address it?
Hearing a lot about it in my district. Obviously, it's a big concern. I think there are several things we can do in this area. We have started spending a little bit more on school-based mental health services. Great start. Having worked in a high school, I know how important those resources are to school districts. So that's a great step. In Jefferson County, we try to think about some creative problem solving. We partnered with a community organization and opened up a youth crisis stabilization facility. Helps young kids when they most need it, and keeps that their health services local. I think it's things like that that just illustrate there's a lot we can do. We just need to get to the table. We can partner with organizations. We did it in Jefferson County. We can do it statewide and really work to make sure that services are available throughout the state. I think that's also very important.
What about abortion policy? How should the state move forward on the issue of abortion?
Boy, if there's one thing I hear top of mind from voters, it's this. People are concerned that their daughters, granddaughters, have less rights than they did. And they're frustrated about that, and they want us to do something in this area. I am strongly in favor of, as I said before, repealing that 1849 abortion law. We need to make sure that we are preserving women's rights in this state and making sure women have the freedom to make their own healthcare decisions, that we give doctors the freedom to make sure they can make sound medical decisions as well.
Do you support any limits on access to abortion?
For 50 years, Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, and I would support that. We need to make sure women have the right to choose healthcare.
Transitioning to transportation, what are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Clearly, roads are always an issue for people. Without a doubt, we need to continue what we've already started. Governor Reavers made it a priority to fix the roads. So we need to keep going in that direction. We definitely need to, fund what we've already supported, keep on schedule, all of that. What I would want people to know about rural areas in my district is there are lots of, other roads in our area, local roads, county roads, town roads, that are in desperate need also of repair and redo for commerce, for agriculture, for farmers who need to transport on these roads. It's vitally important that we remember that rural roads are the economy of our area, and we need to support those as well.
The environment, specifically PFAS and other water contaminants, are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
Yes, I do see this as vitally important. Clean water is so vital to the health, wellness of our residents. We've set aside some money to help deal with some of these contaminants, and it's sitting in Madison. So I think we need to get that money out we need to come together, collaborate, work together, find a way to get that money out to the communities that need it. All this partisan politicking is not helping. The environment is way too important for us to sit back and not act. And I think we need to come together and just get going on it.
Final two questions. Mm-hmm. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
I'd say voters have a pretty clear choice in this election. I am a strong supporter of women's right to choose their own reproductive health care choices. My opponent has said on this show that she does not feel women's rights have been taken away. That's just wrong. The Dobbs decision did take away a fundamental right for women to choose and access health care. So I'd say that's one major policy difference we have. And, it might sound basic, but ultimately she's a Republican and I'm a Democrat. And philosophically, that means we have very different ideas of how we want to govern and how we want to move this state forward. We've had a Republican majority in the Assembly for a long time, and, frankly, some issues have not been addressed. I think moving forward, I understand the concerns of people in my district. I'm ready to get to Madison and get working on those.
Final question for you. Let's say you're elected this fall, you get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties together. What is that one issue?
It would be great. I hear from people what they want more than anything is people to work together, to collaborate, to solve problems together. And so, obviously, I agree with that. I wish, we could move in that direction. There are lots of issues that I think we see eye to eye on. Housing, public schools, healthcare. But for me, the one issue I really wish we could come together on would be gun violence prevention. There is no reason why gun violence should be the number one killer of children in our country. There's no reason that we have to live with the gun violence we do. There are common sense solutions that can keep kids safe. So if I could bring us all together, that would be the issue I would do it about.
Well, thank you, Joan Fitzgerald of Fort Atkinson, the Democratic candidate in the 46th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Joan Fitzgerald, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for having me.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.